The experience was there. The app was there. The service was there. The follow-up was there. That's what makes retail powerful.
Welcome to the Retail Alchemists. I'm Deborah Langley.
And I'm Greg Merrill. And today we have with us Marty Dempsey with Estée Lauder. Welcome, Marty.
Welcome,
Thank
Marty.
you. Welcome.
All right, so to kick things off, we're going to talk a little bit about just the background of Estée Lauder. You've been there for a while. You have a broader career, which we'll get into as well. But just to set the context, global listeners all over. We're in New York City right now. Let's start with folks that are familiar with Estée Lauder and folks, more importantly, that are not. 30 seconds. Estée Lauder, the background.
30 seconds. 27 brands that we manufacture, 25 brands that you might know. Lauder, MAC, Estée Lauder itself, Aveda, Origins, Lauder. Those are the brands that you might really appreciate. Tom Ford, which we own, which I'm wearing right now, which is amazing. That's what you know. A global company. It's situated in like 159 countries. We have over 1,500 freestanding stores we own and operate. And I would say we have 5,000 counters we manage, 8,000 counters that we do a wholesale to. So it's a very interesting business. Obviously, we have an online presence, so it's a very diverse, broad business. And we also do Tmall and all your TikTok, and we do all the virtual selling.
What are the two brands we might not know? Did you?
Yeah.
Oh.
What, 26 and
You
27?
You said two we might not know.
The secret menu?
You know, there's certain, what's the certain brands that you might, Frederick Mall, for example.
Do you know?
No.
I don't, but
Frederick Mall.
I mean, I wouldn't.
It's a great.
I'm not the target.
I'm trying to think of the other brand. I can't figure out the other
Well,
brand.
you'll think of it.
I'll
Right.
think of it.
Suspense.
Yeah.
So before we kind of dive in, so now, okay, Estée Lauder, big company, global brand, a lot of complexity. Let's talk a little bit about Marty. You talk about your time with Estée and even before as well.
Yeah.
Who the heck is Marty Dempsey?
All right. Who the heck is Marty Dempsey? So Marty grew up in consumer products and went to retail. I was in a fashion retail company. We grew the company from $100 million to $2.5 billion. You might know it as J. Crew in Madewell.
Yes, I think we know that one.
Beautiful company.
Yeah.
I'm wearing Madewell jeans right now. Then I moved into Estée Lauder, which it's prestige beauty. So I was brought in to figure out and fix the retail business. You know, with those 1,500 stores, we had a lot of complexity because they weren't born organically. They were born by acquisition. So now we're buying companies with their own technology, their own processes, and their own people. So we try to we're bringing it all together. So that's the whole challenge of my world, right? Is to try to bring the global world together. So we're very global. I'm a very global person. So, traveling in Asia and Middle East and Europe and, Latin America. It's a very diverse culture. And the beauty of it is you use these products that are diverse for the different populations or demographics around the world. So it's a very interesting world. It's just like fashion in a way, because you can't sell ski jackets in Florida, but in the same regard you can't sell different cosmetics in Florida that people won't use because the climate's different, maybe the demographics are different, maybe the complexion's different, maybe the preference is different. That's the beauty of what we do.
So as you bring these brands into the Estée Lauder ecosystem, what parts of the tech stack do you look at as perhaps a centralized strategy, and what parts do you think, okay, we'll leave that with the brand? Or is the long-term strategy to have everybody operating on the same back end?
So that's a great question because that was a big struggle when I first went into Estee. We had a very diverse technology stack from brand to brand to brand and country. We called it region market, but what we did was we created a platform. We did product and platforms first. So here's our platform, here's our product. So we have to distort between La Mer, Le Labo, and Mac when we come to the experience you get in a store or a counter or online. So that's how we did it. We tried to pull everything together. What we realized is we cannot do one technology stack across the world. It's not going to work. China is very different from Asia. Asia is very different from the Western world. Latin America is, close to North America, but not quite there. So we have done very strategically, made sure that we can do the same kind of platform and then do the product, which is distortion by product, brand, by product, by the consumer experience. So the biggest thing is the consumer experience. Your consumer experience is different in Mac than it will be in La Mer or Le Labo or Frederick Mall. Totally different. So that's what we wanted to make sure that we kept that authentic way of expressing the brands.
There's this sounds like a classic case of the Frankenstack, right? Where you grow by acquisition, you ingest all of these new brands and micro companies with different tech stacks, and now you're trying to piece them together.
Yes.
And this is one thing that I talk a lot about, especially in my journey, is you got to have modularity, right? Because you take the Lego example, and great, Legos are wonderful. You can put them together and easily take them apart. A lot of people will put super glue in between them, which is the opposite of modular, because you almost got to break the whole thing down to be able to, rebuild something that's modular. And so I think that's a great question. And with a global, complex kind of, consortium of brands and companies like Estée Lauder, maybe it's really not feasible to do that. But maybe if we think about technology as an enabler for the consumer experiences, you talked a little bit about the geographic complexity. One example comes to mind. We were doing some work. This was at my Nike days in Tokyo, and some of the cultural differences there, the hours worked, right? So people are, very far away, they live in an apartment far away from work. They're gone all day and they come home. The role that 7-Eleven plays in the culture there was really interesting. And Nike had set up, sort of like Amazon does, these pickup points where, you don't want your product to be shipped to your house and be sitting on your doorstep for somebody to walk off with since you won't be there. And so that was a very geographic specific kind of feature or capability that aligned to the customer experience for Tokyo. Can you think of any examples with Estée Lauder where, from a consumer experience standpoint, you had to do things differently for a particular brand or for a particular consumer base or market because it was more relevant culturally or otherwise?
Yeah, I can answer the question. I think there's two questions that you just asked me. One is modularity. How do we make flexibility in the solution? How do we get some synergies in the solution, right?
Yeah.
And then the distortions, right? That's from a technology side. From a business side, because I'm a business technology guy. Tmall, for example, the way the Chinese consumer shops, the way the Asian consumer shops in Asia is much different than what we see here in New York or in the Western world.
Yeah.
Right? In Europe, we have very small pharmaceutical places that we sell our products. So that's a different experience than going to Macy's or, Nordstrom's or Bloomingdale's. And so that's where we see the differences. And that's where, the most important thing with technology is you have to be cognizant of, number one, the brand, number one, the product, the consumer. I think the consumer is the number one of everything. And then the technology. And how do you partner with those those folks to make sure that what you're delivering is relevant and value driven.
So, Marty, if we sort of stick with this theme, you have a retail background, that's touched technology as well, and to your point, as an enabler of, the business strategy. When we think retail, we think kind of frontline associates and the employees of the companies, the brands that are interacting directly with the consumers that really are the kind of physical embodiment of the brand, and are they being good stewards of the brand? What's the right balance? And I'll preface this. This is called The Retail Alchemist. Our whole show is based around the art and the science of retail, right? So, there's some magic and there's things that you can quantify, and some in between. So my guess is your answer will include both these elements. But when you think about the human side of retail, the frontline retail associates or beauticians, keeping the brand alive and leveraging technology, what does that look like? How do you leverage the right technology? What are the things that you look for that will empower those frontline retail associates to help sell the product, but also be good stewards of the brand?
So what we look for, and what I look for, as a professional, simplicity, simple, handheld, very straightforward product. If you look at AI or clienteling or consumer outreach, how do I know what you, Greg, want in this store? How do I know not only your birthday, but also what your wife likes, what your kids like, So I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do. Because if you have an associate that has to go in the back office and look at a computer, it's not going to work. You also, the other thing you got to be careful with is you don't want your, we call them beauty artists, you don't want them on a device looking like they're texting. You want them engaged. So it's a balance. It's an art and a science.
Yeah.
It's really an art and a science when it comes to that. Because that's one of the things about mobile POS. It's great, wonderful. I've done mobile POS in a couple of companies. One element that I never forgot was I was in a Times Square store, and the associate said to me, Marty, the consumers think that I'm playing on my phone. He's selling. So how do you get that experience, or how do you break that mold? Because everyone's, you sit at your dinner table, everyone's on their phone, everyone's doing stuff. You got to break that mold from a physical device to an experience.
Yeah. Unless you can invite the consumer into that experience, whether it's on an iPad,
exactly.
And you see at the food checkout, they're sort of working on their iPad and they'll flip it to you to sort of finish the transaction and whatnot. So it's a more engaging type.
Yeah,
of thing.
you got to mimic the engagement. Right?
So upstream in the product life cycles, what kinds of technologies did you deploy, or did you, to kind of help with the product development, with the research, with the understanding what's happening in terms of UGC coming out of communities? What was the tech there, or what is the tech there that is driving interest for you?
Yeah, so take away the brand names. The most important things are like a consumer data platform, which enables us to understand all the consumers, regardless of channel, whether it's online, offline, virtual.
And that CDP is across all brands, right?
Across all brands. It depends on the company, because some, like Estee Lauder, is very brand specific. So brands compete against each other. That's the way the Lauder family wanted it to be.
Well, that's an interesting
conversation
we want to come back to.
It's a very interesting conversation. But having that consumer rich data, the what you bought, who you are, in a professional, privatized way, and then using some tools like AI on top of it to really segment you,
right?
To know what Deborah wants, What is your skin tone? What is your preference for lipstick? What is your preference for mascara? What is your preference for, a fragrance? That is the most important thing. The other thing is, seamless consumer experience. How can you make it easy? Because, I can use examples when I bought a suit a couple of years ago where, I can buy online and I can pay in store, or I can buy in store and get online. You know what? It took me half an hour. That's not seamless,
No.
right? Because, my size might be different because I'm a little bigger guy, but the consumer experience is critical. So, I believe that some of these solutions, like who we're working with right now, have that capability to bring to level a playing field. To bring all that experience in, bring all the data in, and bring all the capabilities in one solution versus using an iPad, using a register, using something else. Because that's the evolution. We at Estée, I had 1,800 iPads around the world. So you consumers would touch them. Then COVID hit. They didn't want to touch anything anymore.
Right.
You want to touch your own device. So now you got to go mobile, but you got to go simple mobile. You can't go, I'm going to download an app and I have to be loyalty. You want to make it very, very simple. Some of the ones that I really enjoy, I'll pick on skiing because I'm a skier. I have an app. It tell right away. They know who I am. I get a discount. They know exactly how many, which is crazy. They know exactly how many kilometers or miles I've skied in a day. I can get the weather. I can get everything. But it's a seamless experience, and I get a benefit from it. That's the evolution of retail. Make it super seamless. The other thing I was going to bring up, and I'm sorry to be long here. I bought a car recently for my daughter down in Florida, and I went to 5 dealerships, and I won't name the names, but the best one, which had the best price, but the best value, but the best experience. The experience was there. The app was there. The service was there. The follow-up was there. That's what makes retail powerful.
That's a good one. Sticking with AI for a minute, in the lead up to this podcast, one of the things that we talked about was companies, specifically brands and retailers, being AI ready. Yes. Right? Almost every company is going on some type of transformation. Yes. And transformation can't really be kind of incremental step changes. That they need to be sort of leapfrog changes. AI is a tool, is a catalyst that can be used to do some of that leapfrogging. But there's also a lot of companies and brands that are frankly not ready. It's if you try to leap on a very shaky foundation, whatever is contributing to that shaky foundation, you're going to have some trouble. Where are some either use cases you're seeing of AI helping to kind of leapfrog and transform the user experience? Or how do you think about what companies need to be AI ready?
So where I'm seeing it happen, and we're not exactly, 100% there yet, but in the consumer segmentation. So how do I know who Greg is? How do I know who Deborah is? What you will like, what you want to like, personalization, very key. But intelligent personalization, not if you bought this product, you like those. No, something more than that, right? Something good, something really personal. The other thing is targeting those emails, those text messages, the TikToks, to you on a product that you actually really want to buy versus just a general blast. Because everyone gets, hundreds of emails, right? Because you sign up for this and boom, you get emails, right?
Delete.
Yeah,
delete.
exactly. Or you sign up for that and you get text messages. I think that's a great place. I think consumer segmentation, I think marketing, two things, and bring that into the store, bring that into your online, your TikTok, your Tmall, bring that into that perspective. That is, from a retail perspective, the best. Also, I mean, back end, there's so many things you can do with AI, right? Automating, back end stuff like finances and supply chain and stuff like that.
So as you are using these different tools and platforms and solutions, obviously, and from what you've been saying, you have tremendous amounts of data about customers.
Yes.
And those customers shop across multiple brands. And I did want to dig in a little bit about this competitive thing between brands, because if you are seeing data down to the product level, surely you're also seeing opportunities for collaborations, which is, something that beauty and fashion does really well. So how does that whole analytics process work, and how does that get fed into the relevant teams across different brands?
So that's a great question. It's a very complex one for the company that I'm with. What we do is, we bring the consumer together, but, some brands will share information and it's changing. If you look at the Gap, big Gap, I worked for Mickey Drexler for 12 years. So he brought all the brands together eventually, right? On a one website, if you remember that.
I do.
Estée Lauder is working towards that, but there's a differentiation, I should say, from, very prestige brand like Lauder versus, a more, normal mid-range MAC brand or a Veda or an Origins.
So maybe to kind of
it's a tough question. I'm sorry, I can't answer it because it's more of a business question than it is technology.
We'll get you back in a little while, and we're going to revisit this one.
I'm going to change the whole trajectory of Estée Lauder.
I might, if it's okay, kind of bring us full circle here. So, as a parting gift to the listeners, which, as a reminder, there's almost kind of three stakeholder groups, if we want to call them that we find are most of the listeners. It's kind of the C-suite and the folks that are responsible at the top for initiating the vision behind transformation. Right. It's all the folks in the middle that are many times, engineers and architects and data scientists and retail, operations leadership. And then you have kind of your front of the house, beauty artists and whatnot that are directly touching the consumer, right? So, we find folks from all of these groups kind of listening to us. Is there one maybe call to action or piece of advice that you would give these folks that are maybe navigating their own frustrations, their own transformation journeys? Maybe they're in beauty industry, maybe they're not, maybe they're fashion apparel or elsewhere, but what's one thing you would give them to hold on to as parting wisdom?
So my parting wisdom, and it doesn't matter what industry, if you're in something or an industry that services a customer, whether it's a product or a service, you got to focus on that person, that consumer. That is the number one thing. And the other thing is you have to focus on detail. Best service, best product, best value. You got to focus on value. You can't focus on just price. You got to focus on value. Because you can buy a cheap thing. Yeah, okay. You're not going to come back. But if you buy something of value, you're going to come back. And if you had a good service and you have a good product and you're very happy as a consumer, it happens. It's just like going to getting your car serviced. If you have a good experience with the mechanic, you're going to go back. If you have a bad experience, it doesn't matter the price. You're going somewhere else. You got to think of it that way. And you can go into the medical industry. If you have a bad doctor that you just don't like, you're not going to go back.
Or you're dead.
Then it don't matter.
Oh, well, I hope it's not
Sorry.
dead.
Sorry, you can cut
Deborah,
that out.
you can cut that one out. Deb.
No, leave it in. Leave it in.
Marty's dead.
That's
No,
not the moral.
Marty, that was
Okay.
that was great. I mean, honestly,
No,
you're right.
I think
you have to bring it back to
it translates to
person.
everything.
Yeah, it does.
It
You're right.
really translates to everything. Everything you look down, people walking their dogs, everything.
Yeah.
If you have a great consumer experience and you have value and you feel good about the product, the price matters because everyone has to, balance their budget, but you're going to come back.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think sometimes in retail, we have to remind ourselves.
That's the hardest
Right.
thing because everyone goes to a commodity.
Right, exactly.
Cheap. So
Yeah.
one of the questions was from the info, what's commodity versus prestige? You know what? It doesn't have to be prestige. It just has to be I want to get, this sweater in a good experience.
Mm.
Whether it's online, offline, Tmall, it doesn't matter. TikTok, doesn't matter.
Do you shop on TikTok?
I personally don't. I think my kids do.
They do. Okay, Marty Dempsey, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Marty.
You're welcome.